Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to offer dana, then please do go to justthiszen.org/giving. Your support really does make a huge difference. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Last night I was reading a book called How the Swans Came to the Lake by Rick Fields. And the subtitle is A Narrative History of Buddhism in America. And the strand that I took from that, of the many strands, is we're always trying our best, and we're always making up things as we go along, as best we can, as we are in just this. And if I look at the relatively long history of Buddhism in America and the West, our brief time as just this Sangha, and in particular the just this online Sangha, really touches me. We're coming up to our 4th anniversary as an online Sangha, and I've only really just appreciated how amazing that is, and what a unique experiment it is in Zen practice. There's never been this way of practicing before. And so we're kind of making it up as we go along with all the guidance from the ancestors, from our teachers, and we're finding our way in this new world. And as we come up to our 4th anniversary, I'm curious about how we think about our practice, how we deepen our practice, and how we move forward together. And one of the ways that I've been thinking about it is what happened before we were online? What was our in-person practice? And some of us will have been to in-person meetings and retreats, and some of us, our experience is just online. So how do we embrace this rich practice, which is mostly at the moment online with some in-person contact and meetings? I was thinking, what do you do when you sit online? I was wondering this morning how each of you practice Zazen online. And if I think about when we meet in person, we would either be facing the wall, or we would be in a row, or in a circle, and we would be aware of people around us, but we wouldn't be looking at them. So the guidance is to have your eyes gently open, probably at an angle of about 45 degrees to the floor. So you can just see your knees and you kind of know you're there. You know you're embodied. And you're also gently aware of everybody in the room. So that if somebody gets up to go out, you're aware of that. And you're aware of the sounds around you. So if we were to translate that into online practice, we wouldn't be looking at people on the screen. We would probably look at the junction between your screen and your keyboard with your eyes gently open. And you know that maybe somebody was moving or a cat had come into the room in one of the rooms, but you wouldn't be looking at people. so that there's an alive but gentle awareness as we sit. And there are more things we can say about Zazen online, but for today, that's just one aspect of practice to consider. What do you do when you sit? Where do you place your eyes? How aware are you of people around you? There are four ways of thinking about a practice, four practices that we do. One is Zazen, which we do online. The second is study, and you've been studying 2 books for a number of weeks. The third is practice discussion, and the fourth is work practice. If you were in person at a retreat, a large amount of your time would be involved with work practice, as well as Zazen and study and practice discussion with a teacher. The work practice would mostly be caring for things. It would be cooking and cleaning and looking after the laundry and so on. It's all of the things you do every day. So it can be really disappointing because you go to this retreat for 5 days or 3 days, and even if it's an in-person retreat, there's a lot of work to do, and you're doing things you do every day. You're not doing anything special. It's nothing special. But you can think, well, why am I coming here to do washing and cleaning when I could be doing this at home? But there's a very subtle clue to practice in that orientation, in that everything you do in your life is your practice, down to the smallest activity. But it can be daunting and disappointing to realize that. If you think about your day yesterday or your day to come today, everything that's in it, that is your practice, that is your life. But sometimes it's easy to think, well, I'm practicing this morning, but nothing special, and then I'm going to go and do the things I do during the day. So one of the things I'm really curious about is how we extend our everyday activity and conceptualize it as practice. So there are 2 types of work practice in Zen. One is soji, which is cleaning the temple, which happens at retreats. You have people assigned to look after the zendo. And it's a very important practice. And each day in Japan, monks clean the temple for 20 minutes with no expectation that the job will be finished. It's interesting, isn't it, to start something with no expectation of completion. Just do it. The teacher I've recently discovered, Shunmyo Masuno, who's a garden designer and Zen priest, says, in Zen temples, monks do cleaning every morning and every evening. We clean with all our heart, though not because the temple is dirty. The purpose is not only to make the temple sparkle, but also to polish our minds through the act of cleaning. With every sweep of the broom, you clear out the dust in your mind. With every sweep of the broom, you clear out the dust, and your heart gleams brighter. So that's soji. The other one is samu, which is work practice, which I've described a little bit. And in preparation for this talk, I conducted a little experiment in my kitchen and around the house. One morning recently, there was a lot of washing up to do and a lot of tidying and cleaning. And my habit is to get those things done, and then I think I will be calm and serene because I've completed the task. So I lit a candle and I bowed and I said, may our intention equally permeate every being and place with the true merit of Buddha's way. And then I spent about an hour and a half washing up and cleaning. And then I bowed to the candle and I said, we offer the merit of our practice for the welfare of all beings everywhere. May all be relieved of suffering, free from fear, longing, aversion, and ignorance. And may we, together with all beings, realize the awakened way. I bowed to the candle and I extinguished it. And I had that opportunity to notice what happens when I build practice into everyday life. And I will do that again and continue to be curious about what happens. And so what I'm encouraging myself to do and encouraging you is to think, how can I be creative about deepening my practice? Another aspect, and this is when you might not light a candle, but you might have an event coming up. Perhaps it's a little bit challenging, a meeting. But inside yourself, you can bow to this meeting, to this person you might be going to see, and actually frame it as a practice opportunity, rather than something to get through and then to feel better once it's finished. What can you learn from something that could be potentially difficult? And so every day there is these potentials for deepening our practice. And of course, the other way of deepening our practice is to serve the Sangha in some way. And that happens when we create retreats, but also in the day-to-day running of the Sangha. And one of the conversations I think we need to be having is, how do we support each other to have work practice, to actually offer ourselves to the Sangha? I'm very drawn to the teacher Joshu. And when monks who had travelled hundreds of miles to be at his temple, and they were coming for deep teachings, they would bow to him and they would say where they'd come from and explain that they would like some the teaching. And he would often just say, please have a cup of tea. If they'd had their breakfast, he would say the next thing is wash your bowls, which is an indication in this practice of activity, of offering, and using our body-mind to explore the mystery of how we are. I know sometimes I'll finish a meeting and I'll go and I will move completely into my habit energy. I will hold a cup as I've always held it. I will pick up a fork as I've always held it, with the same amount of possibly unnecessary tension. But each time we conceptualize practice as something much more than meeting, there are opportunities to really explore the depth of the mystery of who we are. I think Flint, I don't know whether he was quoting someone, he said, the truth will set you free, but first of all it will break your heart. And sometimes it's really hard to think, is this it? And I think one of the reasons we were so drawn to is just this is it. Today, all you're going to meet. So let's keep a creative conversation about this mystery of meeting online because it's extraordinary. And we're finding our way together with Don't Know Mind. I don't know. I'm finding my way. And so I'm just sharing some of the thoughts and ideas that have flowed through me about this. And I'm so grateful that we've created this beautiful community, which sometimes meets in person, which is wonderful. But how do we sustain our online life and breathe life into it so that it's vital and connecting? Trudy's going to just talk now about another aspect of practice. Um, one of the great opportunities we have here is each Thursday we convert a room into a zendo, which allows us to practice in that way. And if you're coming to the online retreat in just under 2 weeks' time, you might want to create an altar. So Trudy is going to talk to you about her Thursday practice of creating a zendo. So thank you, Trudy.
I'm sitting in bright sunshine. It's very lovely. I was thinking about, I know that the word altar can be triggering or alienating or even just very neutral for people. And I was thinking, how do we move it into what Josh is talking about in terms of it being an ordinary practice, just something we do, and not something that is separate. And for me, there's something about an altar that's about relationship. An altar isn't a thing I make. An altar is something that's kind of co-created between me and the world. So there's something about offering. There's a wonderful Ojibwe word which is about offering, and that includes the notion of sacrifice. So it's something about the relationship between what I'm offering, what the world is offering me back. So we can get kind of hung up about the form of altar, or that, it's a place of worship, that it's something rather than it's a way of intention and relationship. So for me, it's like when I go about, we create the zendo in my workroom, and so we have to move things to create the right kind of space, to have enough room for the bowing mat, and to have a clear space for the altar to be. And I have a collection of silk and a collection of vases, and I start nearly always on a Wednesday or a Thursday morning thinking about what flowers I'm going to collect. And in the winter, that's usually, I might have to go and buy something, but soon like this, I've been very excited recently because I've been able to use the snowdrops and the hellebores from the garden, and the camellias are coming out, and just the twiggy honeysuckle. There's sort of a delight in walking around my garden and seeing the things that I might be able to offer on the altar. And they're also, I don't take, if there's only one flower on something, I don't take it, because that feels like it needs to be on the plant. So I'm kind of, it's a sort of a real sense of intentionality for me about What is it that I'm doing in offering this? And that Joko Beck very famously only had a rock often on her altar. That it was a very, very clear, simple thing, but the rock was there, placed with intention and love, and was about the relationship between the person who's looking at the altar and the rock looking back. And there's something for me about that sense of reciprocity, that when I place the things on the altar, I'm looking at them and I'm putting them there, but they're also looking back at me. I'm in a relationship with them. And over time, I've really noticed that I can do it. You know, if I'm tired, it's a Thursday, I've been working, maybe I've been working a little later than I sometimes do. So, you know, it's like, oh, I've got to get the Sunday ready. You know, and if I approach it with that kind of chore energy, I notice it doesn't feel, it's a chore. It's quite simply a chore. And sometimes I can really catch myself in that chore energy and just think, you know, that's actually not what I want to do. I don't want to create it as a chore. I want to create it as a loving expression of my vow. It's a service to Sangha. It's a service that I'm kind of offering, and so I can interrupt myself and think, okay, you know, how do I do this with a more intentional, clear energy? But it's not that I don't do it sometimes with chore energy too. So, you know, like Josh was saying, the difference between washing the dishes and washing the dishes. And one of my favorite quotes has long been that, you know, before enlightenment, you know, cutting wood and chopping water. Chopping wood and carrying water, and it's after enlightenment, you know, chopping wood and carrying water. We do exactly the same things. Nothing is different. Nothing changes except how we experience it. So for me, creating the altar is such a wonderful kind of expression of that. You know, am I creating it from habit energy? Am I creating it from getting it right? You know, am I being precise because I'm being picky? Or am I being precise because there's a kind of beautiful aesthetic offering in actually being really clear? And I have quite a slapdash kind of careless energy at times. And I've noticed that if I've done something and I've made the altar and I'm sitting watching it or looking at it on the screen and it's off center, I'm like, oh, you know? And it's not because it's wrong, it's just because I didn't intentionally focus on actually getting it in a way that's pleasing to me. And so it's such a gorgeous practice for sort of working with those edges of preciseness out of fussiness and preciseness because it aligns with something. And so that's for me is the kind of real edges to keep playing with, like Josh says, to be curious about, you know, what energy am I bringing to this? So, you know, the invitation would be when we perhaps have an online day, or perhaps when you're just sitting on a Monday or a Friday, to have some space that you bring into your where you're sitting. And it might be as simple as dusting a ledge or lighting a candle or putting a single flower in a vase, getting a beautiful rock. It's I want to say it actually doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter what you do. It much more matters how you do it. And that would be the invitation, is how are you going to do that? How are you going to make our, as Josh says, amazing adventure of an online Sangha? You know, how do you keep deepening your practice? and making some of what you do more intentional, and connecting and relational. So I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy. Just before we finish, the fourth aspect of practice I was talking about is practice discussion. And that can bring up all sorts of things, all sorts of barriers about what that is. Unless you do it, unless you have a go, you don't know what will happen. And you have a wonderful head student that you can meet. And Trudy talked about reciprocity. You can meet her to support her as well in this role, and our other wonderful former head students. You have 2 teachers you can meet. That's another way of deepening practice and not knowing. We're all making this up together. I look forward to our adventures as we go forward together. Thank you very much.